Hey, what's going on? It is 11 o'clock. As always, Nate Mumford, Director of Sales Engineering, back from the road. That's right. Time for another RCS Live. I've been hanging out with you and seeing everybody the past 3 weeks. It's good to be home, and it's also good to be back for another full RCS Live here as well. Today, we're going to talk about GSelector and advanced imaging. This came from a lot of user requests back in the, just seeing everybody talking about GSelector and imaging. We had a lot of requests about how to really maximize and customize imaging. We're talking like generic imaging versus I want you to play this type of imaging. And so we're going to cover some of those things today. And I'll be honest with you, as I'm doing this, I'm literally like, oh, I can do this. Oh, I can show this. Oh, I can show this. I can talk about this for an entire hour. So I'm going to try to do a real crash course on just some of the things you can do. And this is a great session for, get the idea, get the concepts, then call RCS support, and they can help you fulfill what you want to accomplish when it comes to imaging and really customizing this, right? But before I forget, kudos to our friend Mark, who's joining the RCS team. So congratulations, Mark. We love to have you. It's been a long time coming, but can't wait to work with you over there. As you know, we have our chat open here. So Kevin, how's it going? Thanks for checking in, Kevin. I appreciate it. As you know, we have a full, live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter Live, all of that good stuff. You can chime in just like Kevin. Or if you want, don't forget to check out our past videos on our archive, rcsworks.com/rcs-live. If you check out one of the videos on our blog section, there's a little search tool. You can search by specific topics if you wanted to. I know we have some past videos on imaging as well. So, a couple of housekeeping things to get out of the way. Don't forget, always looking for beta users. As I said, we've been on the road for 3 weeks. The next conference we're going to be at is going to be Texas Association of Broadcasters. I'll bring my sunscreen and shorts, and I'll see you there. That's the beginning of August. Don't forget to check your backups. And as I said beforehand, we have the archive over at rcsworks.com/rcs-live. Hey, Harden, how's it going? Thanks for checking in from Zimbabwe. I love it. Star FM. Shout out to Star FM. Thank you, Harden, for checking in. Any questions, let me know. We're definitely here to help out. So, all right, maximizing your imaging, right? So here's what I thought I would do. There's a couple different interpretations of this, but the same core concepts are here. I'm going to teach you a couple things, but I really want to harp on best practices, right, Harden? And so what I did here, this is my classic rock station. And rather than doing the dry versus produced imaging, what I did here is I isolated the eras, right? So the first thing that we kind of did here was I isolated an era sweeper category. I have sweepers in here. And one of the first things that I can highly recommend to you to really customize and make your station sounding great is when you have your imaging done, if you either outsource it or you have it locally in-house, think about how you're producing it, right? Now, over in Zeta, we have a thing called the link song chain, which just means that if I have any type of dry imaging, define it with an early seg, and I'll just go ahead and show you that here because I left it open for you. I'll bring my Zeta over here. And again, it's a link song chain. Let me just go over here to my link. I'll double click on one quickly. It's the early seg marker, this guy right here, early seg. And what you want to do is you want to set it, let's say right here is where the produced stops and the dry starts. I click on this right there. And then essentially from everything here, it's going to play over the song intro as best it can. So if the song intro is 2.3 seconds, it will play over 2.3 seconds of that dry intro. Okay. That's the concept here. And so with Zeta, we can do a link song chain by default and always have forward momentum. But from the GSelector side, we also want to schedule this as well. So when you do a produced sweeper, let's say it's 10 seconds, it's very easy to create a 10-second fully produced sweepers, all the bells, all the whistles, right? But what we want to do is take that 10-second sweeper and then maybe remove half of it from all the bells and whistles. So we have half produced, half dry. Then take everything out so it's fully dry. And now we have that same piece of imaging, and we have 3 different versions of the same read. And when you think about this, and John, hey, how's it going, John? From Sweden. I love this. We're going international today. This is great. John, we're talking about imaging. That's the idea today, how to really customize your imaging. And so what you can do is think about if you have a sweeper and it's like, WRCS FM, today's best variety, and there's a person going, yay. That yay really sticks out to the user's or listener's ear, right? And so what we're doing is by using that same read, but removing the yay and then having a couple bells and whistles, we have three versions of the same sweeper that sound three times differently to the listener. You're maximizing your imaging, and that's where it starts by having three versions. And if we have, let's say, three reads, that means we have 9 sweepers to schedule and choose from, and it really makes your station pop from a listener's perspective. So that's the first thing. You'll have 3 versions of the songs. Now, we're going to start off here is the era. So I have a classic rock station. I essentially have 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, 2010s, and 2020s. What I did, the first thing I did is I went to my link goals over here, and I essentially went ahead to my categories, and I defined brand new different linker categories here. New music sweepers, legal IDs, era sweepers. I forgot to change the colors on these as well. That's where you see the different ones. I just created these like a couple minutes ago. And but just remember, you can always right click on here, click on this. That's how you change the color there too, right? So once we define those in here, really isolate it, because once you isolate those categories, it's a lot easier to control this and reference this all throughout linker. Remember, library and GSelectors are songs. We're working here under the linker side. So linker, link library, and also the related links. It's everything just like GSelector, just on the linker side. So what I did here is from these sweepers, there's a couple things we could do, but if I just double click on one of these here, you'll see that I have a couple attributes attached to it. So I have, in this case, an era 1970s. I can put in a different type of, let's say, era theme or theme era, I should say, which you'll see in just a second. But again, we want to match on things so that when we go and add a brand new sweeper, we want to add things like this is half produced, this is fully produced, this is completely dry. And we first add those elements, those songs or those links, and we attach the imaging portion of that. It's inserted into the overall schedule, and we have much more control so that when we go and actually schedule our elements, we're going to have specific imaging, right? That's the idea. Oh, bonjour from France. Bonjour. Ça va? Oui, ça va. This is like, I love this international. Corey, isn't this great? This is like, I love this. It's so great. Thanks for chiming in over there, Jean-Baptiste. And so let's do this first. I'm going to jump to my clocks, because what I did here is created a bunch of very specific transitions in my RCS Live related links. And we're going to make this nice and clean and, expand this for you so it looks all nice and clean here for you. And this is what I did. And so there's a couple different scenarios here in this specific clock, depending on how you want to do it. So the examples I gave, and thanks to Mark for the idea, we have one that is a throwback song. So if you think of, let's say, randomly throughout your workday, this is a song that is a throwback song. And what we want to do is we want to attach a throwback piece of imaging. So if I play a certain song, it's going to play a, hey, this is a throwback song on WRCS FM. And then boom, it's a throwback song, right? It's going to be really, really cool. That's the first example. The second one, you can see it's right here. The second one is going to be essentially new music intro. The idea that, hey, this is new music on WRCS FM, and boom, I play the new music. There's 2 ways of doing this. You can do a fly-in link, which is essentially a specific, so we can say, I'm going to pick on Corey here. So you can say, hey, this is brand new music from Corey. It's called, the Corey song on the WRCS FM. And then boom, it plays the Corey song. Versus a more generic, which is just a, hey, this is new music. And we have some users that kind of do an intro, hey, this is new music. And then an outro, which is a, that was new music from this artist. You can do that too over in GSelector. It's all about control. Remember, part of this RCS Live is to empower you. So you want to think that I want to do this. I want to do that, right? So I'm giving you some scenarios here, but I want you to get into that mindset. So the next example we have here is essentially a specific position here with a trailing link or a leading link. And that's essentially I want to make sure this is a very specific transition right here, either trailing from N into A in this case, or leading as in this imaging is tied to A, based on how you want to do that. Hey, what's up, Nick? I see you. Thanks for checking in as well. Any questions, guys or gals, let me know. I'm here to help out. So what we're doing here is essentially identifying these transitions specifically in the clock. And again, I put 4 different transitions in here to show you how you can customize this. And from a programming standpoint, let's start with this throwback right here. So in this scenario, I want to schedule a throwback position. I can easily go over here, by the way, and do something like where's my theme song, and do a theme of, let's say, a throwback, right? Something like that, where essentially I assign a theme throwback to a group of songs, and then I'm referencing that throwback here. Or I can do something more creative. I want to give you a couple ideas, and I want to do a clock constraint. So play a song from the A category, not just the entire theme, but use a constraint throwback. Ooh, Nate, what's a constraint? If we jump over here to the clocks and constraints, I'm not going to save my changes. You'll see I have a throwback right here. This just means that, hey, if the attribute theme equals value 1, which is a throwback theme, then play the theme throwback in that position, right? And that leaves a little more flexibility. You don't have to necessarily assign a theme to, this particular clock. You can float that constraint around if you wanted to. Again, a couple different ways you can do it based on your interpretation of that. But you can see here, I can essentially have a throwback in this position. And now I want to go and relate to that actual piece, that actual transition. Jumping back to linker, we're going to work extensively here in the related links subtab. Linker related links. Fly-in links are in addition to what is scheduled, and then we can replace the piece of imaging. Whereas the clock is going to be embedded in the clock itself. And there's different ways you can interpret this. Some users love fly-in links and they only use fly-in links. Some users like to know there's a fallback in the clock structure. The difference between the two is that fly-in links are in addition to what is scheduled, and the clocks are schedule this specific relationship, and if you don't see anything, fall back to a more generic piece of imaging, right? It's kind of either tomato, depending on how you interpret it. So we have a fly-in link here. So going back to that throwback, what I did is I created this song link relationship in which I have a song attribute theme throwback. And so if you see this theme throwback, play this specific link, throwback sweeper number 1. And if you notice, going back to my era example, if I really wanted to make this specific and rotate multiple pieces of imaging, what I can do there is I can say things like the category and then do some type of throwback category, or in this case, like an era sweeper, right? So if I had multiple sweepers for my throwback category, I would just reference the throwback category here, not the specific link. Versus if I had new music, right? I could essentially say, hey, this is new music. Play this song has this link, right? That type of thing, specific one-to-one. And you'll notice here a couple things I want to talk off the bat here is notice this replaceable category group section here. Remember, fly-in links are in addition to what we're scheduling, and then we can replace it if we wanted to. So we can say like, hey, if the theme is a throwback song, play this, again, going back, I'll hit cancel here, double click again. If the theme is throwback, play the link throwback sweeper, right? Well, I don't want to have 2 pieces of imaging playing back to back. So what I can say is only replace right here. I know it's a little small here. I apologize. Only replace. Don't forget there's an F1 dynamic help guide here if you want to reference this for later, F1 dynamic help. And then I can say here, well, think about what I'm doing here, that only replace option. I have a category here called legal IDs, right? Legal IDs are required here in the States. We must identify ourselves per the FCC. And so what you want to do is saying, hey, if I'm a throwback, go ahead and replace all these categories. However, do not replace the legal ID because I need that there. So if you ever have, let's say, a themed weekend, a concert calendar, a concert sweeper, whatever it is, you want to make sure you insert that, but you might not want to check off legal IDs because you don't want to replace that, right? You want to leave that as it is. Or addition to, there's specific links. I don't want to replace specific links. That's your news bed, your traffic bed, and stuff like that. And so just know you have control options here in regards to how you replace this, right? Because the whole premise of this video, right, Jean-Baptiste, is that we want to go and say, take your generic imaging, and I want to make it more specific. Always do this piece of imaging first. And if I don't, rely on something more generic as well. Yes. So Jean-Baptiste, great question. So the priorities linked to the categories will take into account or will play related links in a random way. It will play the related links as relation to the categories themselves. And we'll get to that in just a second. But it's a very, very important question. You're absolutely right. That's why I like to isolate some of those, because if you put them all in one generic category, you might not have the control you want. So, for example, you can have some fly-in link sweepers and then have something like a minimum separation on those sweepers in the category so that you're not always having too much of that, right? That type of thing. One of the things that I did, Jean-Baptiste, is I had an artist positioning sweeper, and I had two versions, one with music hooks, one without music hooks. And I isolated it, and I put the ones with music hooks, and I had an attribute called hooks. And that way, I put in under the goals and the balance and the attributes, I took that specific attribute, music hooks, and I put a min sep of an hour and 20 minutes or so. They played twice an hour, typically around 20 and 40. And so I put an hour and 25 minutes, which pushed the course across the quarter hour as well as every hour. So what happened is I would always have two artist positioning statements, but I would have, let's say at 12:20, there would be music hooks. And then at like 2:40, there'd be the next music hook. And you could keep these generic, but the whole point is control. And that's why I personally like to isolate these with their own categories, because as you said, Jean-Baptiste, they're linked to the categories and linked to their own priority lists, right? Let's see here. Mark was saying, You could do that. Mark was saying the reverse of what I was saying earlier, where essentially that legal ID, I don't want to replace legal IDs. You could put a clock constraint in there for the theme, and so that it's a legal ID in there too. So, and yeah, you could do that, either one. It's like 1 + 3 = 4, 2 + 2 = 4. The end game is still 4. It's how we get there is the same exact thing. So thank you, Jean-Baptiste. I see you there too. So again, we're talking about maximizer imaging by making a lot of control and defining what we want there. And with the fly-in links, this is in addition to what's going on. We have the throwback sweeper. We're saying, hey, this is a throwback song, so I want you to replace whatever generic imaging is there and throw in a throwback sweeper, but don't replace legal ID for legal reasons. That's what we're doing right here, right? The other example we can do is some type of era imaging. So what I did is I went to all of my songs and I essentially added for my entire song library using the library multi-song changer, said, hey, here's everybody. You all get the theme era imaging. That gives me the common denominator that I can then reference here for the actual category era sweepers. Remember, by having the one sweeper produced, half produced, fully dry, that allows us to have multiple variations in specific categories that we can control in their own priority lists, right? And again, we have the same exact rules here. And what we want to do is definitely check off only replace, because we want to make sure we only have one piece of imaging between the songs. And there are some options there. Like you can say certain things like, we have some users that interpret this. They'll leave the two songs side by side with no imaging in there and only rely on fly-in links for specific imaging, right? So it'd be like a dead seg, which if you're not familiar, a dead seg is one song just transitions into another. There's a dead seg between the two. And they just always use a fly-in link. If there's no fly-in link, some special relationship, they prefer the dead seg. And so they'll do certain things like they'll might enable not between songs or leave that enabled. Versus other users will use the actual clocks itself. And we flip to the clock portion of this here. You can see this is where I have that same thing: theme, era imaging, category, era sweepers. And from my point of view, notice here again the fallback category group. So instead of in addition and replace, we want this specific imaging. And if we can't find anything, we fall back to a generic category group. And from my point of view, it's easier to visualize because you can see exactly where that clock constraint is inside starting the clock constraint. You can see exactly where that trailing or leading link is in the log structure itself. So that's nice. But, some users are like, well, I'm building it. It's me. I know what's going on. That was the Taylor Swift reference there, right, guys? It's me. Hi, I'm a leading link. And so what I can do there is I can essentially go and see that, hey, there should be something here, if not fall back to something generic. It's just kind of how your brain operates. Remember, all of GSelector is based on your music philosophy. That's what we're doing here. And so again, theme, era imaging, category, era sweepers. And now going back to, thank you, Sean Baptiste, for laughing at the Taylor Swift joke. And so, going back to, this is actually a great segue, Jean Baptiste. So speaking of what you're saying about priority lists, now, if I have a category era sweepers, based on my link library, and if I go back to my fly-in links and over here, you can see that I have 2020s, 2010s, 2000s, but I should have, in theory, multiple versions of each one of these eras. And each of these eras have an era attribute with the corresponding year. And so what I can do there is jump in like our link goals, go to our bands, and now I have this beauty here. And what we're doing is we're essentially creating those transitions by saying, hey, if I'm a 1970s link, don't segue a song with the 1980s because those years don't match up, right? And so what I'm saying here is don't play 70s into 80s, don't play 70s into 90s, don't play 70s into 2000s, don't play 70s into the 2010s. Then I repeat that. Don't play 80s into 70s, 80s into 90s, 80s into 2000s, 80s into 2010s, right? And by having all of those segue bands in there, I'm now defining that whenever I play any song that is associated with my controlled piece of imaging, I only want an associated correct relationship with that piece of imaging. Now, this is where I start to kind of bring in other examples. I'm using era right here, but there's nothing stopping you from saying certain things like with the 3 versions of the song, don't play a fully dry link into a fully produced song. Don't play a fully dry link into a half-produced song, or half-produced intro song is what I should say. Don't do then a fully produced into 0 or half. Don't do a half into a 0 or full. See what I'm saying there? So by defining those things and those attributes, putting them in segue bands, we're essentially only having the relationship we want. And from the segue band perspective, this is a set it and forget it type of area. So yes, it does take a good kind of 5-10 minutes set up initially, right? Where I can go and say, okay, I'm going to take all my library, filter by intro times, isolate them, add that attribute. I've done that in the past in previous videos. Again, all I'm doing there is jumping around a little bit. You can see there should be intro here, right? I'm just sorting by the intro. And then I can go over here and say, okay, so this is no intro. These might have, I'm going to cancel that. Yeah, I know this one's right. And then I can go over here and say, hey, this is, 5 to 10 seconds, something like that. And then I can have here, this is 10 plus. So I can control this very easily. Don't forget your browse list right here. Just highlight them, drag them over, multi-song changer, make your changes pretty quickly on the fly. Again, I've done this with users beforehand. It takes a good maybe 30 minutes or so. But then once you do it, you're done. And your station will sound so awesome. I'm telling you, none of that generic nonsense where it's like, hey, here's a song. This is WRCS FM. Here's a song. No, have some fun. Have some control. One of the examples I always show there too is if you go back to the clocks example here, there's a transition here. And again, this technically should be a leading link, I should say. Boom, same thing over here, but you can see there's a boom right there. Just like up here, new music category, new music. There's era. We have a really cool user that took with this idea, this concept, and I talked to him and he ran with it. And I use this example all the time. But what he did is he essentially played around with trailing links and leading links, or using the after in the fly-in link and the before in fly-in link. And he created essentially a transition based on eras. The key thing here was he had a whole bunch of sweepers that were essentially from Tom Petty to Fleetwood Mac. This is WRCS FM. And one sweeper was from Tom Petty, right? The next one was from or to Fleetwood Mac. This is WRCS FM. Those were his sweepers. Those were two separate sweepers that he produced that he then scheduled in this transition. And so what he did is, in that circumstance, jumping back over here to linker, I'm not going to save my changes. Going back to my related links, go to my fly-in links here. What he did was artist, so artist AC/DC, and then he used the related song artist, AC/DC. That's what he did there. And the sweeper, by the way, included the attribute related song artist, and then, of course, AC/DC. And so he would have 2 to 3 versions of Tom Petty, 2 to 3 versions of Fleetwood Mac. He would have 2 to 3 versions for the outro, 2 to 3 versions for the intro of the same artist. And he assigned that. But if you think about that transition from a listener's standpoint, that is going to set you apart from your competition, because you are saying, this is what I want to schedule. This is what's going on. And of course, we have some users that take that concept. I have eras here, right? I have produced, half produced, dry, playing over corresponding intros. But then you can do unique things like maybe content. You can do certain things. Like if I have a certain Tina Turner sweeper, was an example I had in the back of my mind. I can have a Tina Turner like live sweeper, and I can always incorporate that into my fly-in link schedule. And then going back to Jean-Baptiste's, right? If I have any attribute here, if I go back to my link goals, balance, attributes over here, and then I have things like era or content or whatever it is, now I can go to my 2020s and I can say certain things like do a min-sep on this of maybe 2 hours and 35 minutes, which if you have a typical 4 or 5 hour shift means that you're really only having one of the unique specialty pieces of imagery playing once during a day part. See what I'm getting at here? See how we're taking the concept and we're building on this over and over again? There's so much control here that you can do a lot of really, really cool things here. So again, utilize linker. That's the idea of advanced imaging, the control aspect. So let's do this. Let's go ahead. If you have any questions, get them in now so I can go ahead and answer them for you and then wrap up the video. Don't forget to check out our archive over at rcsworks.com. I can blow this over here. Well, I'll do a ticker this time. There you go. rcsworks.com/rcs-live. That's our past video, our archive over there. Don't forget, check out the blog section. You can do a full write-up and read about these videos in the past as well. Today we're talking about advanced imaging with GSelector's related links. The best way to show this, I'm going to not save my changes, is go to this clock structure here. So what we did is we created essentially a song position with a constraint throwback that's tied to a fly-in link so that when I see a throwback theme, I'm going to play a sweeper that is, boom, this is a throwback song, right? Versus this example here, which is a leading link, which is going into new music. And so this is a generic piece of imaging that says it's time for new music on WRCS FM, or new music discovery on WRCS FM, plays the song. If you want a more specific new music, we have some users that will take this and piggyback it. So they'll have one sweeper that says it's a leading link and it's going to be this is new music discovery on WRCS FM. Then they have a fly-in link that says Nate Mumford, happy birthday, into Nate Mumford, happy birthday. And that relationship is then, of course, the song title into the actual song reference, right? Versus something like a trailing link. We want this to be here, or leading link, which is an era thing. We can say, hey, this was a certain era song. Boom. And we play the next one from there as well, right? And these are all ways you can kind of see. We can do a fly-in link. So maybe we have something like here, 2 songs back to back. Notice how every line here has a sweeper in between all the songs, except for this one transition. That is our dead seg or our fly-in link relationship. And we know it's there because we might say certain things that we don't want to replace our fly-in links. And since there's no links here to replace, we know that transition is going to land correctly with only the piece imaging that we want. Makes sense, right? And going back to Jean-Baptiste's point, by going into our linker, link goals, categories, defining those in here, we then go to our priority list, and we have our Segway bands that are included in here as well. So don't play 2000s and 2010s, et cetera, et cetera. We then can say, don't play a fully dry piece of imaging into a 0-second intro. We can define that in here as well. Or we can go into our link goals, balance, and attributes and further define that. Don't forget there's specific links as well. So if you want, maybe, for example, the 2020s or whatever it is, there's one specific link that has a, hey, it's, we play the music from today, the 2020s. Woohoo! And that woohoo really sticks out. Well, then go to that specific one, go over here to a MinSep. And again, I said beforehand, give it like a 235. Average day parts are what? 4 or 5 hours. 235 is 1 spin per day part. Call it a day. Done. Boom. Awesome. Right? And the last thing I'll tell you too is under fly-in links, related links. I'm not going to save my changes. You'll see there's a little kind of road sign here. This is your fly-in link demand. I like to leave this, let it schedule, right? Let all the fly-in links schedule as it is. You'll have a whole bunch of fly-in links here. Let them all schedule as is. This should be a very high number. Let it just play as is. Use the link goals and balance to control these specific sweepers and how they schedule in your log, not the overall fly-in link demand. That's me personally. I swear by that. Let this number just go ahead and play. And then, of course, use the control aspect from the link goals to really control your rotations. That's a lot of stuff. I threw a lot at you. I'm totally well aware. You can always go back and rewatch this video on our archive over at rcsworks.com/rcs-live. But remember, the whole point of these RCS Live videos is to empower you. I want each one of you to go in here and say, this is what I want to do. So I'm talking to you, Nick, and let's see, is it McGart? McGart, I want to, I didn't give you a shout out. I'm so sorry about that. I apologize. I want you guys, and John too, and Kevin, I want you to go here and say, I want this to happen, right? And how we get there, you can reference this video, you can call in RCS support, but we want to make sure that you sound great. That's the idea there, right? Oh, look at that, Jean-Baptiste. I love it. Working a lot on country attributes with their TV stations. Yeah, 100%. And yes, we have some rare TV stations on GSelector as well, but you're absolutely right. Rotate those country attributes accordingly. I love the link goals. There's so much control there, per hour, per day part, per minimum separation across the entire day, all of that stuff. We have the full rules and breakdown there as well. So many things you can do with that element there. So absolutely, you can control that too. So I love seeing that as well. So hopefully you've been empowered. Sleep on it. Call support, and you can tell them Nate said that I should do this, and we'll help you out. All right? Hey, listen, have a fantastic rest of your day. There's Mark. Thank you, Mark. Yes. GSelector's all about tell me what I want to do and not tell me what not to do. Exactly. Totally agree. So I'll see you next Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern time for another RCS Live. It is Nate. Have a fantastic